Phylllis Bensoussan, she is an example of somebody who has learned to face her fears and heal and grow, a sensitive and supportive light in the parental groups. We have supportive groups, as I mentioned. We have a Thursday night group, we have an Orthodox women's group, and Phyllis has been there for many years, and there are so many times when a new person will come in, a parent, and I'll look over at Phyllis and I'll sort of motion to her, why don't you answer that question, because you could probably handle it better than I can. She's an amazing light and support to people in the groups. There's something I'd like to read that really reminds me of Phyllis. It's from one of the books on recovery, one of the texts on addiction recovery. It says, in recovery, we have discovered that humility is simply an awareness of who we really are today and a willingness to become all that we can be. Genuine humility brings an end to the feelings of inadequacy, self-absorption, and status seeking. Real humility places us neither above nor below other people on some imagined ladder of worth. It places us exactly where we belong, on equal footing with our fellow human beings and in harmony with God. Please welcome Phyllis.
This is very funny. I'm in a shul, and when a bar mitzvah needs a stool, I feel like I need a stool right now. Anyhow, I'm so happy to be here to share my story. So, a little bit about myself. I'm married. I have a wonderful husband who is not here tonight because he's in Israel, but he's completely in support of me being here. I have 2 boys, 2 sons. One is 22 and one is 14. At the end of grade 9, the 22-year-old discovered weed. And my husband and I were not comfortable with this. He had all of the reasons why it was healthy, it's almost legal, it helps me at night when I can't sleep, I have ADD. There's all kinds of reasons he had, but we were still very uncomfortable with it. And just about that time, he had a visit to the doctor, the pediatrician. And the pediatrician asked him, how much do you smoke? And he gave him the amount, and the pediatrician said, oh, that's normal for this age. So that was, who's going to argue with the doctor? Anyway, we weren't comfortable with it, but we figured he's a straight A student, he's on the honor roll, he's so smart, very high IQ, he has a great personality. Like, he would never be stupid enough to get addicted. Well, the weed turned into alcohol, and it progressed so fast, I couldn't even believe it. And I remember he came to us and he said, I have a problem, I need help. So we went back to the doctor. And the doctor at that point made oh, he's coming. See, there's the rabbi coming with a stool. Thank you so much. And at that point, the doctor made a referral to CAMH. The problem was, it took 4 months to get an appointment. Thank you. Wow. Oh, I look so tall. So by the time he was seen at CAMH, he was already, at that point, a full-blown alcoholic. And maybe that's something that, we always can learn and change. 4 months is too long for an appointment. And he was young then. I guess he wasn't ready. And it just didn't work. It didn't work for him at that point. And I think because he was too young and he wasn't ready. And so now we don't know what to do, because we went to the doctor, we went to the special hospital, and now I have no other ideas except, I said, you know what, I'll manage this. I'm going to be the manager of the alcohol. Does that sound crazy? It sure was crazy, because I was at that point very sick. I didn't have any other ideas but to try to control his drinking. Well, that didn't work very well. And before we knew it, he was in a great deal of trouble. So at this point, the doctor didn't help. I used everything I could do. I was completely out of ideas. When you don't know where to go, who are you going to call? The rabbi. Call the rabbi. And thank God, I don't know how he knew this. We shared our story, and this is Moshe Steiner. He said, call Zalman at Jack's. He can help you. And I said, who is Zalman and what's Jack's? I just had no idea. Why would I know? We didn't know anything about addiction. So we called Zalman, and I had an appointment the next day with my husband to see a counselor. And I have to say, in the beginning, it was unheard of to think to go to a group, because somebody may know me. So there's been a lot of growth since then. It's about a 5-year journey that I've been on. And now all my thinking has shifted. It was all about actually it started with resentment. I said, why is he doing this to us? How could he do this to us? And if you think about it, from everything we learned tonight, addiction is a disease. If your kid, God forbid, my kid had cancer, would I say, why is he doing this to us? How could he do this to us? And then, of course, came the guilt. I must have done something. I must be a horrible parent. I sent him to the wrong school. I didn't treat him right. And then, we started to come eventually to meetings. And I met, all the people at Jack's, and they had a tremendous effect on me. And they helped me so much. And one of them is, 2 of them, Herb and Judy, who are here. And I remember feeling all this guilt and all this, something that I did wrong. And Herb said something to me that changed a lot for me. He said, Phyllis, you did the best you could with what you knew at the time, but now you know better, so now you have a new responsibility. And that just relieved so much of the guilt, and it was so helpful. Thank you. And so many other things I learned. I remember when my son was struggling, there have to be healthy boundaries. You can't give them everything they're asking if it isn't going to be healthy. And I remember my son had a very big struggle, and I called her and I said, I don't know, how can I not help him? I'm his mother, he's in pain. How? And he said, Phyllis, if you solve this problem for him, you're going to take away his chance to solve it himself. And ultimately that's what we want. We want kids that have independence, that know how to solve problems. So there was a lot I needed to learn. Just going to take a little break. There was somebody else at Jack's, and even though David referenced it already, I'm going to say it again, and that's my friend Gordon Hayward. And I met him and he told me his story. He lost his son when he was 14. He went to a concert downtown, and there were a lot of drugs at that concert, and he took all kinds of things that he probably never took before, and he never came home. And they found him several days later in Lake Ontario. So when someone goes through that and tries to teach me something, I'm going to listen. And I was having a tough time saying no, because as Ori had said earlier, there was something, even though my son was so smart, so cute, so much personality, there was something kind of unsettled in him, and he always seemed to be unhappy. So he would ask me for things as he grew up, and I would just give him everything, because I just didn't know what else to do to kind of ease and make him feel better. Of course, that didn't help any, but that's when Gord said to me, Phyllis, it's easier to say no than it is to say Kaddish. And when I was able to breathe after he said that, I said, okay, I'm going to learn to say no. And I guess a blessing that I had was that I was open and willing to learn. I knew at that point I was out of ideas. There was nothing else I could do. And I knew at Jack's, they were experts. So just like if my son, God forbid, had cancer, I wouldn't say, I think I'll treat this myself. I know better. I would go to the best expert I could find, and I would do exactly what they told me to do. And that's what I did. I kept coming to groups, I kept listening. I didn't understand anything, nothing made sense to me, but I was determined to listen and try to change. And they kept saying, you have to change. And I said, why do I have to change? I don't have the problem. But it is a process. And like it's been said so many times tonight, addiction is a family disease, and it affects our whole community. It's absolutely rampant. There are groups that I go to. David referenced the Orthodox ladies group. I mean, there was a need, so they created a group in somebody's house. I started going a year ago. There were about 4 people. Now there's more than 20 people. There's a huge need that we have in the community. So I've learned so much, and David has done so much education for us in all of our groups. I remember when my younger son, so I have now the younger son, the one that gets ignored because the other son has so many needs and so many issues, and he's a very, very sweet boy. And I remember he received Hanukkah geld from the States, a couple checks. They were like $36, but when you translate that to US money, that's a lot of geld. And I remember telling him, you got Hanukkah geld. And he said to me, it's okay, Mommy, I don't need it, you take it. And And I said, oh, what a sweet boy. And I, ran to share that at the next meeting. And David said to me, that is not a normal reaction. It's his Hanukkah geld. He should be using it. He should not give it to you. And I was like, wow, I never thought about that. And that took me on a whole journey to learn how to deal with my younger son. And David taught us about different roles that family members take on when there's addiction in the family. And he taught it to us one night. And there was the chief enabler. That would be me. There's the kid who's the hero, who wants to be the perfect kid because the other kid is making so much trouble and so much heartache. And then there's the clown, the one who, makes silly and joking so that everybody can get a little laugh. And the one who retreats to his room and just, gets buried in the internet and the video games. So the next morning when I took my son to the bus, the younger one, I said, I learned something interesting at Jack's last night. Do you want to hear about it? He said, sure, Mommy. And I started to go through these different roles. And every time I got to a role, he would say, that's me. And I get to the next role. He said, that's me too. He said, can I be all of these things? I said, well, yes, you can be a little bit of each. And it was so important because I learned to allow him to let go of these unhealthy roles. And so that was so, so valuable. Thank you, David. And now my son, the younger one, it's all about education. And the more they know about drugs, the better. He's in grade 9. The gym class has now changed from basketball to drug use. My son knows a lot about that. I think he corrects the teacher sometimes. And, one class, they were very disturbed. My son and his friends came over for Shabbos dinner. And they couldn't stop talking about this what they saw that day in the gym class. And it was a commercial from the States. And it talked about a drug called crystal meth, which is a very, very horrible drug. And in the commercial, this boy says, I'm only going to do it once. Just going to try it. And toward the end of the commercial, he's punching his mother in the face. And they were very disturbed by this. They wanted to talk about it. It wasn't exactly the Friday night dinner conversation that I'm looking for, but I said this is an opportunity to teach. So I let them ask whatever they wanted to ask. Because there's no point to hide. In the beginning, when I had this struggle, and I'm on this journey for about 5 years, I would never go, in the beginning I wouldn't go to a meeting because, someone may know me, and now I'm speaking in front of, a couple hundred people. That's the spiritual growth. And as crazy as it sounds, even though this was the worst challenge, so difficult, I can't explain the pain that a parent feels when you look at your kid and you see that they're struggling with addiction. You look in their eyes and it's them, but they're not there. Like the light is out. It's terrifying, it's painful, you don't have any idea what to do. And by isolating and just not getting help, that's absolutely the worst thing. Because this problem, it usually progresses. If you don't treat it, it doesn't get better on its own. It just gets worse. And so we were very fortunate that we found Jack's. And I want to say also that Jack's is there for the community. It's like a gem, a jewel that we have, a place that we can go and get in right away. They know where to refer. They know the treatment centers. They know the help that the parents need. And it's certainly a worthy cause that we should be supporting, because Jack's is there for us, and we have to support Jack's. So why have I still been coming to Jack's for 5 years? I'm pretty smart. They probably wouldn't have asked me to speak if I didn't know something by now. I'll tell you why I come, and don't be frightened. If this is a new problem, if you're suffering, you don't need to come for 5 years. For me, a lot of people come for a few months, they learn what they need to learn, and that's it. For me, I go every week to a Thursday night meeting, a Tuesday night meeting, and it gives me so much inspiration and hope. When I see people that come, they're in pieces. I mean, there was a mother a year ago, she was a wreck. Her son was psychotic from the drugs. It was like it looked so hopeless. And, by her coming to this meeting, and she had been to treatments, and as soon as she didn't like what someone said, she'd run to a different doctor. And because she had the support of a group of mothers that understood we were able to give her the support she needed, and she got help. And now her son is in recovery, and she's doing great, and so is her husband. So that's just such a blessing. There was another case of an addict that came to one of the meetings, and I saw that I knew him from the community, and he just looked awful. I felt so bad. I didn't even recognize him. He was in active addiction. And then about 1.5 years later, I saw him again at another meeting, and it was like the light got turned back on. It's just incredible to see somebody go through that journey and come out in a better way. So for me, I've studied so many different things. 12 steps has been really helpful for me. And I still come because maybe I can help somebody else. So my thinking when I started was all about me. What is this doing to me? How are people going to think about me? How could my son do this to me? It was very selfish. And now it's all shifted. It's just about maybe I can help somebody else. So I guess in closing, I'm going to say this. If you can leave with 2 thoughts. There's been tons of information tonight. I don't even know how you're still sitting still after all this time. But if you can leave with 2 thoughts. One is that addiction is a disease. So it deserves the same compassion that we would give anybody with any disease. Nobody chooses to be an addict. Nobody wants it. No family wants it. It's a very difficult. But it's a disease. And I've seen people's lives ruined. I've seen doctors lose their license because of a disease, because of the disease of addiction. I've seen people gamble away their homes. Just, you cannot believe, because they just have no control, and they need the help so badly. So it's a disease. And number 2, there is hope, and there is help. And now you know where to get it. So if you're struggling, there's nothing to be ashamed of. That, you just don't need to be. We know it's not your fault. So reach out. If you have a friend that needs help, you now know where to go. So now, I think after all the knowledge we know, it's finally time to break the stigma. Thanks so much for letting me share.